involvement. They must be involved in the games, and the games must not be above the level. That means if you are dealing with some school children, think of those games which will interest them. If you are dealing with the UG students, then think of the games which will interest them. There are plenty of games, and most probably some of these games are available, I mean, in PCR, for example, a book written by PCR, Cambridge University Press. I mean, there are at least 50 games, communicative games, which might be useful to teachers as well as students, and you can play these games at your place even. I mean, students can be, advised to play these games with their parents if their parents are comfortable with the target language. That's how you are, maximizing what we can say, the use of the target language. Then let's see the next question. What is the nature of student-teacher interaction? What is the nature of student-student interaction? This is what we have already discussed. That means student-teacher interaction. As I said, the teacher is a facilitator. He is a helper there. He does not have to pause as a teacher. He does not have to teach actually. He has to help them. He has to give them valuable suggestions which will make them use the language the way it is used, the language which is used in society. Of course, what I'm trying to say is the language in use in the sense that we can say, for example, newer expressions. For example, nowadays people say that's awesome, something really new, and people use these expressions, they enjoy these expressions. Let students learn these expressions. So in your interaction, you are a facilitator. You are actually helping them to find out newer expressions which are in use. So remember, there is a big difference between the language in use and the language that should be in use. The language that should be in use is the language which you find in grammar books. For example, whom do you want to meet? Nowadays people generally say, who do you want to meet? Who is the letter for? Or this is a person who I was talking about. Now who is rapidly replacing whom? And see, you might say that is grammatically incorrect, but it is there in use. People use it and it is accepted. If you buy some new grammar books, for example, let's say if you buy a Longman English grammar of written and spoken English for students, then they have mentioned this thing there. So let students learn all these things, and as a good facilitator you can do this. You can teach them newer forms, newer expressions, and that's what you're supposed to do. Of course, your second thing, that means in your student-teacher interaction, you are a co-communicator. So keep communicating with them, keep talking with them, keep using the target language, and if possible participate. Then what is the nature of student-student interaction? First of all, they have to interact a great deal. Make them interact, and they have to do this in various configuration. For example, pairs, triads, small groups, and whole group. That means you can divide them in small groups. Then there can be pairs. There are different ways, and these ways are really very effective. These ways will definitely help them to what we say, interact in different situations. That means sometimes there is a group of 3 people, then we have 5 people. So how interact, how they take turns, how they start, how they end, how they continue, how they hold a conversation, and what happens when one of them doesn't know what to say, and how one person gets the opportunity and jumps in. That is really important, and that is how actually day-to-day conversations take place. All right, next question is, how are the feelings of the students dealt with? Of course, by learning to communicate effectively, students will feel motivated to use the target language or to learn or to study a foreign language. Sometimes students ask, why is this? Why are we studying all these things? Because they don't see any practical use of the things they study. But if they can easily see, okay, this is where I can use this thing, this is where I can use this linguistic structure, that means they are feeling motivated. They are motivated to learn these different structures because the structures are quite useful and they know that. So that's the first thing. At the same time, allow them to express their individuality. That means let them share their views, let them share their, let's say, opinions. You just give them, for example, a short article on sports or a short article on great leaders, and let them say what they believe all right? And then you can ask some students to raise questions even. For example, okay, you ask questions and you answer the question, and if they cannot, you can definitely help them. So somehow make it more interactive. As I said, that's what I've been repeating again and again, that interactive and encourage and motivate, but these are some key words, remember, and that's why I have been repeating these words again and again. Then the next question is, how is language viewed? How is culture viewed? Well, language is a vehicle for communication, and that's how it is viewed. That means how best you can use language to communicate your ideas. That's the main thing here. That means knowledge of the function language is used for. That means you must have some knowledge of the functions for which language is used. How many functions do you perform in day-to-day life? For example, greeting, offering, suggesting, negotiating, agreeing, disagreeing, debating, arguing. So these are different forms, these are different functions which you perform with the help of language. And that is how language is used. That means language is a tool which is used to perform different functions. And how is culture viewed? That's the question. Of course, culture is viewed as the popular style of living among people, how people live, and how some norms of behavior. That means certain things are not appropriate in certain situations. So you have to take care of all these things as well. That is how culture is viewed. Of course, there is one concept which is equally important here, is intercultural communication, but we are not going to discuss that. But you must make note, you must note down that this concept is also important, that intercultural communication, because we have different cultural norms and language is cultural specific. So certain things which are quite quite normal in our language are not normal in some other languages, because their cultures are different. Let's have a look at the next question, please. That's the seventh one. What areas of language are emphasized and what language skills are emphasized? Of course, functions are emphasized over forms, or forms and functions perform together. So functions are preferred and functions are dealt with in this communicative language teaching. For example, let's say would you and could you. I have already given you this example. These are some ways to offer. These are some ways to give something to your friends. But if you are very formal, or if you are talking to some seniors, you say, I wonder if you could, or if you would mind. That is how you seek their permission. That is how you usually talk. So that is how these areas of functions are emphasized here. And what language skills are emphasized? Okay, let me tell you, all the skills are emphasized: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. But in case of reading and writing, please note that what is really important is the negotiation that takes place between the reader and the writer, and these points are really very important here. So it is not the text that has got the meaning, but how the reader responds to the text, that is really important here. So even you teach them how to read innovatively and creatively. So that is really important. After discussing all these things, I hope you really enjoyed the lecture. And to conclude my lecture, I'd like to show you one clip by Jesse Richards, the person who has written a lot on communicative language teaching. And let's have a look at this let's say this video clip, and it's here.
Hello again. Today I'd like to talk about communicative language teaching. It's an approach to language teaching that's been around for a long time, and indeed many of my books are based on the philosophy of communicative language teaching. So I'd like to just try to explain what it means. It's an approach which developed as a reaction away from exclusively grammar-focused approaches to teaching that really gave priority to accuracy and to the sentence as the unit of presentation and practice in the classroom. Communicative language teaching argues, of course, that the goal of language learning is communicative competence, and that we develop communicative competence through making communication the focus of the classroom, that we learn language through communication, that language is the byproduct of using language to communicate. And in order to do this, activities have to be developed that enable students to practice communicating in different ways according to their language proficiency level, through tasks, through focusing on role plays, through information sharing activities, and activities of that kind which require students to draw on their communicative resources and to try to make communication possible in the classroom. So communicative language teaching is essentially a set of general principles that refers to how communication can be the focus of teaching and learning, and which attributes the acquisition of communicative competence to providing opportunities for students to practice communicating through their classroom materials. So communicative language teaching is alive and well today. It's taken different forms in recent years, and in some contexts it's led to what we call task-based teaching. In others it's led to text-based teaching, and others it's led to content-based teaching, which I'll talk about in other podcasts. But the principles of communicative language teaching, I think, are alive and well and still important for us to consider today. Thanks for listening.
Hope you enjoyed the video as well, and hope you enjoyed my lecture too. Teachers and students, that was my first attempt this time. That was my first lecture. So you can share your views with me, and my email ID is devsmehta@gmail.com, devsmehta@gmail.com. So please share your views. Thanks for listening to me. Thank you.
SANDHAN, All Gujarat Integrated Classroom.
સેટેલાઇટના માધ્યમથી જોડતી કડી એટલે સંધાન.